So let's just start with, what's going on right now in the world of technology. So I think, we're really at an incredible inflection point right now. We have a group of technologies that can each independently make a dramatic change to our everyday lives. And if you think of them together, they can create a reality that is just will not be recognizable at all 10 to 20 years from now. So what I'm referring to is artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is what we're focusing on here, virtual and augmented reality, the Internet of Things, and blockchain technology. Of course, this is about AI, and that's what we're going to dive into. In this session, we have a fantastic group of distinguished panelists who have been on the cutting edge of applying AI to various business processes, from call centers to retail analytics, and we're going to be focusing on how AI applies to customer service and sales specifically. But we're also going to be talking about what each person's perspective is in terms of the future of AI, and more specifically in terms of business processes and how those are affected by AI. So I'll just give a quick introduction, and of course, once everybody starts talking, they can add whatever I missed. So Shai Berger is a thought leader, innovator, and CEO of Fonolo. He's on a clear mission to educate the call center industry on how to improve the customer experience. He has a degree in engineering physics and a master's degree in applied science from the University of Toronto. And Fonolo's award-winning solutions are trusted by a growing list of call centers who aim to enhance the customer experience. So they've had Fortune 500 companies, SMBs, and Fonolo is valued by customers because of its scalability, its expertise, and its proven return on investment. Our second panelist is Robert Sir. Robert is currently the head of platform at Talkdesk, the fastest growing cloud-based contact center solution. He oversees the App Connect part of Talkdesk, the first enterprise app store of its kind that allows for self-service, one-click integrations, 30-day trials, and pay-as-you-go billing. With App Connect, customers can seamlessly integrate, innovate, and best-of-breed add-ons to their Talkdesk call center in order to meet specific demands of today's modern customer. And they're going to be launching the App Connect with 20 partners next Tuesday, by coincidence. I suppose I'm going to wait for Jan to join before introducing him. So I'll just move on to Alex. And so Alex, I guess probably the closest to my world. He's been leading the strategic innovation and data science division at Sears Canada. Prior to working at Sears, he worked with international brands and startups on artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, and experiential technologies. So a lot of interesting stuff there. And myself, I'm the Director of Information Technology at Intradeco Apparel. We're a leading apparel manufacturer and distributor. We sell to Walmart and Amazon, all the big box retailers. I run all strategic IT initiatives, data visualization, business intelligence, cybersecurity, cloud migration. And in my other life, I'm an angel investor, and I've been investing in cutting edge companies, specifically in virtual reality. So I'm on the board of advisors and an investor in Virtualytics, which is a Pasadena-based company that does data visualization and machine learning in virtual reality. So that's enough about us. And I'd like to start with the first question, which is going to be a little bit kind of a higher level question about how AI relates to customer service and sales. And so this is basically the first question. So for the panelists, what do you think the evolution of chatbots will be, and chatbots and AI assistants in general, will be in the customer service industry over the next 5 years? And just to get specific in terms of call center operations, for those of you who are in there, how do you think that AI is going to change the labor force, and what can companies do to adapt?
Yeah. Anyone can take the question?
Yeah, I can take this question here.
Feel free to chime in. Everybody gets a turn.
Yeah. Ultimately, what we see, what I see specifically is that, I think chatbots are not going to replace people, but they'll enhance people. And what I mean by that is, I think there's kind of a disconnect right now between how customers kind of interact with a company across multiple channels. So, for example, there are multiple times where I've called into a specific call center or support center based on after an interaction via chat, for example, right? But for the first 5 to 10 minutes of that call with an agent, they have no idea what I'm calling about or who I am. But in those instances, I think where AI is going to take that take this to is the fact that, when I call in, they're going to know what I'm talking about. They're going to know, who I am and what problems I need to solve. So we're not wasting the first 10 minutes of any call. So, for example, I think chatbots can really help in, really figuring out who this person is, maybe getting them through the first layer of support and trying to figure out basic functionality like, I forgot my password or what my balance is. But in highly emotional kind of situations, there's still that need for that human-to-human emotion. But now what chatbots can do then is take that artificial intelligence and ensure that that person is then routed to the right human, and then the agent that receives that that interaction has the right context in order to better serve that person. So essentially, where I see chatbots going is really, I guess, driving better and more improved human-to-human emotion, which I don't think are going away.
That's great. I mean, Shai, I'd love to see how you see it in terms of Fonolo and your previous experience, and maybe more from the engineering perspective, given your background. Oh, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Oh,
How about now? Can you hear me now? That was weird. All right,
oh,
so I think
perfect.
of chatbots
Yes.
really as a subset of self-serve. And I think when you're having this conversation, in my mind, the fork in the road is live agent assistance versus some form of self-serve. And in the realm of self-serve, you've got the old-fashioned IVR stuff where you dial in and you press 1 for this and 2 for that. You've got chatbot solutions. You've got forms on a website, right? You've got mobile app. You've got kiosks. I mean, anything that is self-serve, to me, is in that bucket. So the question is really the balance between those two worlds, and chatbots are really just a new variation on the theme of self-serve. So when you think of it in those terms, it's easier to separate the big issues from the issue of chatbots, which are really just a new item in the world of self-serve. So zooming back out, in my mind, the big issue is that the better we get at self-service, the more of the simple transactions move out of that bucket for live agent assistance. And that's a trend that's been happening for decades now. We're just getting better and better at self-service, both because the companies that implement self-serve are good at it, and the tools keep getting better, and because consumers are more and more willing to self-serve. They want to go that route. They would rather check the app on their phone or do a quick chat rather than dial in and talk to a human. So both of those forces are working together to move as many transactions out of the bucket of live agent assistance. What that means, though, is another factor coming into play, the flip side of that, which is that the transactions remaining, the ones that do need to go to a live agent, are the more complicated ones. So what we end up seeing is that conversations that end up in the call center are more in-depth, take longer to resolve, have more complexity to them, and most importantly, they are the moments where you really can come through for your customers or leave a bad impression. So they become much more critical, each one of them, and that's really the big picture from where I see it.
That's fascinating. I know I've tried to create a few chatbots of my own and try to convince my friends to use them, and after about 2 questions, they stop. So it's a lot more difficult to make one that actually has useful interactions. But I think the idea that the complexity increases for human interactions makes a lot of sense, and I think that's going to be the case in general with AI. Whatever is most complex will, in the end, go to humans, and then eventually, maybe.
Yes, you can hear me now?
Alex, any thoughts on this?
Oh, lovely. So I share the sentiment of both Robert and Shai. What I would add to it, provided that I've had some early experiences with developing chatbots like yourself, and of course, yeah, initially, so you give the chatbot to your coworker or friend or whatever, you have the 2 questions, and then they get bored of it. I think part of the reason is that the initial chatbots that were being deployed are very much conditional. If you think of conditional statements, if this, then that. These are not real AI in the sense of what we would think of AI perhaps these days. But from an experiential perspective, I would say that there's a balance to be kept that from a customer's perspective, especially if they're calling in with a complaint or a defect product, whatever that may be, and they're upset, and they're met with the chatbot, and it's very obvious that it is a chatbot. Sometimes that can leave a bad impression right off the bat that you're treating them, the customer, as perhaps less human than they would like to feel in that moment, right? They're looking for that human connection. I also think that there's opportunity for chatbots from an experiential perspective, and it's kind of a contrast to this whole thing, is I think the actually efficacy of the chatbot is, I think, half is the technology, and the other half is what the other person is bringing to it. So I worked on a couple of campaigns. So one of the brands, well, 2 of the brands I work on in concept chatbots was GM and Mondelez, and both of them were daily conversational chatbots. And yes, there were conditional statements and so on, but it would ask you like, hey, how's it going? What you doing this weekend, etc. And that engages the customer. The customer knows completely that this is a chatbot, but suddenly it becomes, there's something that happens in our minds where we start interacting with a chatbot in a conversational manner rather than just question either this or either that. So I think there's still untapped opportunity for chatbots to provide an elevated experience.
That actually, I love that answer, and it really takes me to one of the questions that I've been dying to ask you guys, which is, what are some of the risks of automating sales interactions in terms of, for a brand, if we all know what happened, with when Microsoft tried to unleash their chatbot, to the Twitter sphere, and what if a chatbot starts giving inappropriate answers or angers a customer? How do you deal with that? What are the legal, ways in which you handle that? I mean, there's going to have to be a whole new set of ideas that will have to come out to handle interaction between more advanced AI assistants and humans. And I'd love to know how you guys think the world is going to approach that.
Yeah, I mean that's really a question, a really interesting kind of predicament. I mean, to me, I don't know if chatbots really should be providing answers, right? Like, especially in a sales and support environment where experiences that really drive a deal, really drive a CSAT, are really human to human when the urgency is high, stakes are high, emotions are high, right? So, I mean, should a chatbot really be providing some of these really key answers, or should they really be, the chatbots and AI as a whole, should they be assisting humans who give those answers, right, and who provide those solutions? I mean, that's...
Yeah, I think we need to do a quick reality check here. We're really, the press around chatbots and AI is often very, very misleading. And the part of this is the term AI is so broad and used in so many different ways. And the press and journalists, sometimes because they're lazy and sometimes because they're just they're on deadline, often just throw together a bunch of stuff and don't represent where we are very accurately. Where we are today is if, as a company, you want to use chatbots as part of your self-service strategy, you pick some transactions that you think are compatible with that method, and you try to make it work. And these are transactions like track the package, make a reservation, when are the hours open, specific individual transactions, right? So these are transactions that today are already self-serve just on some other platform, right? So for every company, you've got a whole set of transactions that they do with their customers. Some of them are self-serve, some of them are live agent. Of the ones that are self-serve, you can go and duplicate them in chatbot form. And you can use some of the advanced AI stuff to do natural language processing and make the process a little bit easier. And if you do that well, you may get a higher success rate than you were getting on your web form. And even that's unknown at this point. Like, we still don't know for sure that with a chatbot I can get a higher completion rate with, you know, a track my package or make a reservation kind of task.
Right.
Versus having it be a form on a website. We still don't know that. I mean, jury is still out. So let's, you know, reality check on where we are. You know, on the other side of the fence, we've got general research on conversational AI, and we've got better natural language processing and better speech recognition that allows some of the more advanced implementations like Siri to sound more lifelike. But those are really two separate issues. So if you're focused on a customer service kind of path, it's a really simple question. Can I take a self-service process, deploy it in chat form, and get as good or better completion rates, or containment rates as we usually say in the call center world, as I was before? That's it. That's the only question you have to ask yourself. That's a lot simpler than the more broad questions of, you know, what's appropriate for an intelligence that's artificial to say to humans, and what legal ramifications and regulatory issues, and are they going to, are the AI overlords going to take over the planet, and, you know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We're still pretty far off from the point where we need to be worried about those kinds of things. Yet you see, at least in other areas of machine learning, like in computer vision, some ethical decisions that need to be made. For example, with self-driving cars, right? You know, what do they do in certain very specific difficult situations, and you know, who do they protect the driver? Do they protect the pedestrian and things like that? Now. I did want to move it over just for a few minutes over to sales, and we'll get right back to chatbots, and we'll get over more into call centers. But so I'm very curious in the retail space, and this is kind of specifically for Alex, but you know, I'd love for all of you to chime in. Do you guys see that there's an opportunity to combine natural language processing, which of course is, you know, a key machine learning technology that's become very popular, with customer analytics for the retailer, for the, you know, the buyer, the retailer, and on the flip side, could you use natural language processing for a retailer, you know, like a Sears or Walmart or Macy's, to communicate with the shopper and help them with, you know, even in store with situations that they might have. So for the analytics on the inside and for the customer on the outside, you know, where do you see that going, Alex? And I'd love to get everybody's opinion on that.
So absolutely, yes, there's a huge opportunity there. I think, again, it's very much untapped. Just as an example, most all large retailers have some type of customer service center, especially a call center. And these call centers receive thousands of calls. So to give you some numbers, so 10,000 calls per day. Those calls are retained, and they're retained over a period of 2 years, right? So then within that, you have now a data set, voice, mind you, a data set of over 7 million interactions, right? And these, the retention period are for compliance purposes and so on. But you have this huge data set that you can now train a chatbot in more in an artificial intelligence sense that we consider it now, let's say neural network, etc., graph database, and so on. And it's unstructured data, but it's also, there's annotation to the data as to, okay, is this a complaint call, is it a sales call, what's a resolution, etc. So I think, so that's part of the question, so if I remember correctly, so if there's opportunity, yes, there's opportunity. What's the second part of the question?
So the first one was analytics, and you talked about that for call centers. The second one is interacting with the customer as they might be going, through the
yes. So just to wrap up the analytics part as well is taking this data set, whether it's call center, there's also email, social stream, etc. Is I'm a strong believer in a augmented intelligence situation, and we kind of touched on it during this call, is where, for example, when I call in, just going through, just being triaged to a certain attendant and they knowing why I'm calling in. But likewise, having all those interactions, past interactions, to be analyzed and then being put forward literally on a screen in front of the attendant, so they can see this caller called in this many times. This is the type of this is the communication style, this is the sentiment, this was the resolution, etc. This is how we had to escalate versus not. And so on one hand, now I, as an attendant, I can provide much more personalized service. But on the flip side as well, you can also analyze the attendant. So it may turn out that, for example, with my accent, I was raised in Sweden, maybe I can, interact with a Swede better than a Canadian. Who knows, right? Or some.
Right. Or you can call a Swede, right? Didn't you guys do that?
Totally. Oh, yeah. And so now you have now two-way matching of both the personalization on the customer's end, but using the interaction data from the attendant's end and get the best possible match. So here we have a situation now that although we are automating some of the interaction, we are analyzing the data. Is actually, again, going back to elevate the customer experience, because who you end up to talk to turns out to be the best person, at least at the time of the call center, that is best suited for you.
Fascinating. I mean, honestly hadn't even thought about how you might do the analytics on the call center side in a retail space, but it makes a lot of sense. Did anyone else want to chime in on that question?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I don't have, obviously we're not solely focused on the retail space here, but I think what Alex talks about brings up a really good point, right? It's, we have, the way the media portrays it and the way the buzzword is kind of thrown around. In theory, AI is supposed to solve everything, right? It's this giant kind of umbrella that's just supposed to solve everything for you. But ultimately, we know that, AI models have to be trained for specific industries, for businesses, for use cases. It's really not one size fits all, and it's really about, how do you pick the best of breed kind of AI solutions for your specific customer and your specific industry. And I think what we're going to start seeing as these technologies pick up for AI engines to really get smarter, quicker, is actually putting this into practice, right? The barrier to adopting new technology is really, really hard in the contact space, and really it's not a one size fits all. And so really what I think you guys, we'll all see in the industry here is that starting to actually put this into practice and adopt the right AI models for what you want to do, there's going to be a lot of focus on that. And, what I'm trying to work on here at Talkdesk is yes, the AI model itself is very important, but actually facilitating the right AI models for the specific customer and actually removing that barrier to adoption, right? It's really risky to introduce any new tech into an old technology such as call centers, and I think you'll see a trend in the industry where.
So you bring up a great point when you're talking about, look, and I think Shai said this very, very well too. Let's get away from the sort of hype in the media and everything, and let's just kind of look at, what is AI talking about here? We're talking about a particular type of machine learning where we're using training data, which is, in most cases historical data, historical call data, whatever it might be, to train a particular algorithm, maybe a neural network or some other kind of algorithm, so that then it can make a prediction about what should be an appropriate response. Or, if you're talking about sales, what the sales are going to be for next year. So what that leads me to think is you're going to have a threshold, right, where the prediction is valid. And I've seen, looking at the various products that all of you are working on, you've tried to make it easier for the customer to decide where that threshold should be, the enterprise customer, that is. And I'd like to know from all of your points of view, how do you think that can be communicated to both the enterprise customer and then eventually to the end customer? The fact that there is a threshold at which the training set's not going to be enough to give you a high R squared. Okay, let's not get too specific, but the fact is you won't have a high confidence level in the response. How do you guys deal with that, which is a very technical topic, but it's critical?
Well, to the point of getting terminology into a place that's better for everyone involved to understand what we're talking about, I don't have an easy answer for that. I think we unfortunately went down this path where we put this umbrella term, artificial intelligence, around a very disparate set of things that may not really belong together. So sometimes when people talk about AI, they're talking about chatbots, where it's really about natural language processing, which is an important and valid field, but really has very little to do with the neural network stuff that people are talking about when they're searching for patterns in these large data sets and make a product recommendation, which is also valid and interesting, but it's just very separate fields of research. What I've been telling people is, when you see a headline that involves AI, just replace that word with software. Really, that's all it is in the end. So if you see a headline that says, "Will AI replace call center workers?" Substitute the word software, and then think about how valid that idea seems to you. Because at the end of the day, what we seem to be doing is just calling anything on the leading edge of software research, we just label that as AI. And that includes a whole bunch of sometimes unrelated disciplines in this field. The second part of your question is how do we communicate that to an enterprise customer? And there I think the answers are very domain specific. So if you're talking about product recommendation, then it just boils down to, can I demonstrate an algorithm that is better than what you have, in terms of success rate? And, in the Netflix kind of scenario where you've got so much data coming in, you've got 100 million users choosing from a million different titles, they always run these competitions, comparing one algorithm versus the other, and they pick the one that is giving them a good success rate. In a customer service kind of scenario, as I described earlier, you take a process that's currently under some other self-serve channel, and you try.
I can bring an actual use case from Sears Canada. So we developed what we call the virtual assistant. So think of it as a giant iPad being put in a store, and you have your selection. So one of the two commodities categories that are big to Sears Canada is mattresses and major appliances. And the sales cycle from a commissioned sales assistant takes about 40 minutes to an hour to spend with the customer, right? So if you have your single sales assistant on the floor, the second customer is waiting around, or maybe they give up and walk away. So what this allows you to do with this giant iPad, if you will, is step through a question. Okay, are you shopping for a mattress for one person or two people? Okay, for two people, you're looking for a double or a queen. Okay, queen, right? So you have this like logical tree now that you would normally have in a chatbot technology, right? So the next iteration of that was conceived to be, rather than having a touch screen, you could have a voice conversation with it. And but it's not in a sense to necessarily replace the sales assistant themselves, but again, going back to that augmented intelligence, because there is at one point, mattresses are an interesting category because conversion rates are high when you get actually the customer to lay down on the mattress. Then you have that commitment. And so it's one thing for the chatbot to say, go and lay down on a mattress versus somebody leading you to laying down on the mattress. Where the logical tree ends is the two ways it can end when they step through and tap through this screen is A, they're confused, or B, they are answer all the questions they're to answer. And if they are confused at any time, they can trigger a message to the sales assistant, who may actually be over in another department, let's say major appliances, to come over. But as they come over, the sales assistant has now a smartphone device. On a smartphone device, they know exactly what this customer has selected, right, in terms of, okay, they're looking for a double, queen, etc., they have back problems or whatever that is, and perhaps even the name. And you can go as far as, okay, taking a picture of a customer. Obviously, you need to have consent and so on, which is another topic, but it's also recognize the customers themselves. So rather than the sales assistant walking up to a customer, starting that conversation all over again, you're actually halfway through the sales cycle itself. So wanted to bring up because there is they are taking the logic of chatbots and applying them into this scenario, which is hardware on the floor, and it does eventually translate to more efficiency, as well as you can now have a higher turn of customers that you can service. You can serve them faster. You can serve it more efficient. And I think that thinking comes from the chatbot world, which on the other hand, you can argue it comes from conditional logic, right, which is the software itself.
And how does it apply to the call center world for Robert and for Shai to getting what Alex is talking about? How does that apply to trying to apply AI to call centers? And on the side of customer service for Shai, how does that apply to trying to help enterprises service their customers better through things like callback technologies or whatever is next? How do you guys see it from the perspective of your particular niches?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like we know the call center industry is notoriously slow moving, right? And ultimately, I think to get enterprises to kind of adopt this new technology and take advantage and gain wide adoption of all the great advancements that have been made in the AI space, we just need to present it in a more clear way, right? So outside of making it easier to pick the right AI model for your specific needs and removing the barriers to adoption, as I spoke about before, we need to make sure that we don't present it as reinventing the wheel, right? We need to set the right expectations. We're not saying that AI is going to completely change the way you run your business. AI is going to completely change the way customers interact with your brand. But really, all you need to know is that we're just making the process, more efficient and more automated, right? You're never going to eliminate call routing, but how do we make it faster? How do we make it smarter, right? How do we use AI to make sure that there is no IVR that they need to go through, right? That the right agent talks to the most important, most significant call at any given time. Don't eliminate human-to-human interaction, right? We know that's not going away. AI is not going to replace empathy or emotion, but AI can make it more effective, right? So, if I'm calling into a call center, because my flight has been delayed, they should know that I'm probably going to be angry. They should know that I've flown business class before. They should know that I own a home in San Francisco, so they should know who I am, and as a result, make that process more efficient and ultimately customers don't care how any of this works, right? They care about how much effort it takes on their end, and they just care that it works. So ultimately, I think the way we position AI within the contact center space, outside of just making it more real, making it more attainable.
Yeah, that sounds great, and I have to give a lot of credit and a lot of praise to what Talkdesk is doing in the call center world. It's a space that really has been lagging in terms of making, when you look at all the enterprise technology that's out there, the call center has in many ways lagged behind a lot of the innovation and often been the weak link in the process of trying out new ideas and trying to move the needle on customer service. And it's no one's fault in particular. It's kind of the way the call center world evolved with a lot of proprietary standards, and the whole world of voice was very closed for a long time and really evolved separately from the web world, where it was open from the very beginning and really encouraged a lot of innovation. So the call center world is catching up, and the move to the cloud is a big part of that. And new call center platforms like Talkdesk are a big part of that. They're making it easy for companies not just to set up a call center, but to try different things. That has not been the case in the past. I mean, we have to realize when we get frustrated with the company and we say, why is the call center so clunky? Why does it feel so, why does it feel so stiff compared to other parts of the company when I interact with it? It's not. Part of that is because a lot of call centers are still powered by very, very old technology that is hard to change. And so transitioning to what Fonolo does, that's really the mission we've been on, is to fix one particular part of the call center world that's been broken, which is leaving callers on hold. And the obvious way to avoid leaving callers on hold is to offer a callback. And in the past, that's been very difficult. With the traditional platforms, they've made that obvious feature hard to deploy. So that was the opportunity we saw when we started Fonolo, and we make it a very simple process. Now, that said, the idea of connecting a call center agent with a customer through a callback is actually quite powerful beyond just fixing that problem of waiting on hold. And the way that relates to the AI issue we're talking about today and the chatbot issue is whenever you've got another channel of communication between customer and call center, you need to plan for the case where it doesn't work and you need that human connection. So you need to think about, how am I going to get that transaction from a text-based chat or a chatbot or an IVR or a web session?
I know I personally love the callback technology, and I can't wait to see what the next iteration of callback customization is going to be. Actually, I just saw that Jan Hickisch, our fourth panelist, is now able to join us. So I'll just take a minute to introduce him and ask him to comment on everything that we've been discussing. So Jan actually is responsible for global solution and portfolio management at Unify. He's also the CEO and managing director of FastViewer, which is a daughter company of Unify, and he's one of the founders of Circuit, which is a workstream collaboration solution for enterprise, sort of trying to take things beyond email. And they're really focused on the customer and building solutions around the customer's demands to make teams work better. So, Janet, if you're there, I'm going to just say, what are your thoughts about what we've been discussing? Is your mic on? Bueller? the only thing that comes to mind in a situation like this. All right, well, I guess Jan is having some issues. Oh, there is he there? Is that you, Jan? Okay, well, as soon as he gets his mic to work, he knows he's welcome to participate in the conversation. So we're getting close to the end here. It's going to be 3:50. So why don't we take some of the questions from the audience? So I'll just start from the beginning. So we have a question from Tim Geiner. What area in the applications world do you think can be most transformative with chatbots? Is it e-commerce, customer service, or HR? So that is the question from the audience.
Both.
What will be the most transformative? E-commerce, customer service, or HR?
Both e-commerce, well, triple in this case. From e-commerce perspective, it's straightforward. Well, not straightforward, but I think it's easy to imagine where chatbot technologies can assist through the customer journey through the site as they, either search for a product or navigating the filtering system and so on. However beautifully it is designed, there are going to always be people that are going to be stumped by it. Even I'm stumped by it, that I was, working in that world. And what chatbots can provide is, and now we're talking a little bit more sophistication here. So, for example, if I'm browsing, let's say, this jacket, right? I like this cut or this color, but I want to find something that fits with maybe a black shirt instead of a white shirt. Now, having structured data such product information systems already part of the ecosystem, of the e-commerce ecosystem, and image processing and classification now becoming much more accessible with frameworks such as TensorFlow, etc. And you have Inception 3 models that you can just retrain the top layer, and you have pretty good results. That in itself I think is going to be transformative, whereby the browsing, rather than you're going to have a browsing experience, I think it's going to start shifting more towards an interactive and true interactive experience where you actually have a dialogue with the site. It's starting already where you have your virtual attendants and so on, but I think it's going to be more tightly integrated. On the HR end, there was an article in TechCrunch yesterday. I think a Valley-based company just got huge funding. They're looking to disrupt the recruiter industry. I think that's poised to happen. Customer service. We just I think we spoke about it in terms of call centers, etc. So I think all those touch points.
Because it's not bad enough to get a call from a recruiter 5 times a day. Now you're going to get a call from a chat recruiter, a bot recruiter.
I think the vision is beyond just the call. The vision is that taking you as a person, taking your data and analyze your data, you as a professional person, and match it up with a job that perhaps you would never have considered because you never considered a company or the city, etc., and so on, and go to the point to length analyze your Twitter feed, right? It may looking at a Twitter feed or a social interaction, you can actually determine somebody's propensity for a change or for a move or not. They want to stay in the same area, whatever that is. So you can provide that first touch point with the candidate can be much more tailored as opposed to me calling, hey, are you available because I saw your resume online.
Yeah, I think in both scenarios, right, I think both scenarios are really driven by emotion, right, ultimately, right? I think there's a hard line where you can get a chatbot to kind of accomplish, basic algorithmic functions, and there needs to be some clear lines drawn there. But ultimately in HR, retail, customer support, it's all about emotion. And until AI can get to a point where you can teach it emotion, train emotion, empathy, I think it's still going to be a ways away from replacing humans, as we talked about. But in both areas, as long as there's a clear distinction as to what these AI chatbots can.
Do you think that there will be a point at which people will want to replace themselves? Oh, oh, please chime in. It is. No, no, I have a, yeah, I actually have a great question for you that I think you'll
Yeah,
like, which is,
speaking.
do you think that people are going to want to replace themselves with sort of chatbot
Not,
versions of
I just
themselves
wanted to
that
check whether
are
finally the
trained
audio is
from
working
the
on my
whole
end.
history of their
So I
conversations
tried
since
it
they
a
were
couple of
born?
times. Sorry for the
In the same
delay
way that
and
people
finally
replace
had
themselves
trouble
with
again.
avatars in a virtual
But
reality
it looks like finally
world.
I'm
So
in. Thanks for the
thinking way
introduction,
out
by the
there, do
way,
you think
Eduardo.
that's ever going to happen?
Yeah, I think there are two sides to it. On the one side, nobody wants to get rid of himself in regards to job and what you're doing, right? So that's the one thing. On the other side, of course, it would make a lot of sense instead of doing all the routine work again and again, which is not interesting. You would rather focus on something which is interesting, solving sophisticated challenges on a customer side and so on. So I think there has to be a balance between getting rid of routine work, which you don't really want to do. You don't want to do repetitive work all the time. You want to get interested into new stuff, exciting stuff, helping customers to fix things. So I think a little bit from both sides, right? By the way, one thing I wanted to add, unfortunately at that point in time, the audio didn't work. When we were talking about the callbacks and what could be the next level, there is something which is, I would say, an easy replacement and a much better way of getting connected and get humans into the interaction from a chatbot. With WebRTC, it's a new technology. You can initiate audio, video, any real-time interaction from a web page, right? So there is no longer this technology barrier where you need to connect the web with the underlying communication technology. It's there now. So I think we have new stuff at hand which allows us to create much better experience for the customers and to switch from a bot interaction into
And Jen,
a
what
human
about the
interaction to maybe
post-email
go back
world
to a
that
bot
Circuit
interaction
is working
when the
on?
bot can
So
serve
I was
you,
looking
so
at
to say,
some of the
documents
presentations, and I'm
and so
fascinated
to
at
say
this
cleaning
idea
up the
that
interaction,
email is now no
providing
longer
back
an effective
demand,
way of
finishing the
communication,
call
but
and so on, right?
we need
So
things like
I think
Slack and all
there
kinds
are
of
a lot of new
collaboration tools.
opportunities
Tell us a
now,
little bit
and
about your vision for that.
it's about us to make that real and to make it happen in the right way. Yeah, so, and I think it's true for both. For the enterprise communication and collaboration world where Circuit and Slack are intended to be there, right, and to help, but it also can help for the contact center environment. If you look to all the different channels people can use for a contact center environment, whether it's chat, whether it's email, whether it's voice, usually when you do something in written form, on the one side you expect more accuracy, right? So it's to the point. On the other side, it's easy to have misunderstandings, right? And so what we want to prevent is those typical email flows back and forth, question, answer, and not getting to the point, not getting to the solution. If now more people get involved, and it's not just a one-to-one back and forth, but multiple people are sending emails around, then you end up in a tree of things you never ever will be able to control again. So instead of having this back and forth, we move those things into conversation. And instead of you doing all the ordering work of the emails and your brain is working hard in order to connect the pieces, this tool, the solution is working for you, is taking all this brain work away from you, which is not necessary because the tool should do it at any point in time, right? And it's connecting you, it's providing you the right answer to the right question, and it's saving a lot of time. And again, it's not you doing the brain work, but it's you focusing now on your business, and the tool is supporting you in a better way. We've done some customer surveys. We have done analytics on how people are working when they are just in email versus when they are working in a new workflow-based collaboration tool. And they save a lot of time in those new collaboration tools because of they're getting faster to the point, they prevent misunderstandings, and they have better ways of providing answers, right? And in a contact center environment, I think that can be to the advantage of it because you can switch the channels. You can pick and choose the channel, what's appropriate in that particular moment. And also one other thing which I find so far ridiculous in a contact center environment, the agent has all the data about you as a customer. But you as a customer, you have a hard time to follow through the history you had with this company you're calling in, right? Because you don't have access to the data. But the question is why? Wouldn't it make much more sense in future that not just the company servicing the contact center, but as well the customers itself have access to all the data so that they can follow up what happened a week ago, what happened a month ago. And by having this information at hand, I think there will be a much better dialogue, right? Right now it's very imbalanced. The agent has all the information, the customer calling in has so to say nothing, just in case he was writing down all and everything, yeah, probably then, yeah.
Very interesting. I mean,
I think in future,
from my perspective, I always wonder to myself, why do I always need to repeat my phone number or my address, and it's 2017, right? This is ridiculous, right? And I'm sure everyone on this panel has thought about some idea for how to stop that, how to create a collaborative environment between the agent and the customer, so that you don't have to be repeating, V for B for Bob. That's just come on.
A lot of. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you count those cases, we have also analytics about that analysis and information. How many times customers are calling in because of the same problem? And the agent has solved that a month ago, 2 months ago, half a year ago. But for whatever reason, that person forgot about how to solve it on their own, right? So they call in again. And in that particular case, if you can provide a history and the solution is there as well, you prevent a lot of unnecessary calls, right? So I think it's to the advantage of both, to the company and to the customer, that we leverage what we know. And there's a lot what we know, right? What you just mentioned is repeating again and again, this is my phone number, this is my account, this is I was born in, and when. Of course, those are the basics, and this is really ridiculous.
There's some things we're working on with
much
partners,
more,
and,
which is
Shai,
repetitive work, and it's wasting time of the company.
Use that advantage and use that move to the cloud to turn this more into an integrated software solution where it's easier to kind of hand off some of that intelligence from chatbots, from AI engines, data from Salesforce, data from your website or your mobile app where the call is initiated from, so that when you do schedule a callback with Shai's team and Fonolo, you're also able to provide context, right? So that call comes into your contact center, it's routed accordingly, and the agent knows exactly what you're calling out and exactly who you are. And so, because this is now being approached as a cloud-based software problem, actually improvements in that, I think, very, very soon here.
Yeah, and so it's a very good point. In former time, when we were using those traditional old PBXs for the contact center as a base functionality, there was no data channel, right? So now looking to the new technology, looking to WebRTC, for example, there is a data, video, and of course the audio channel, right? So we have different channels for the different type of data. So you are able to transport all the data. That problem is definitely solved, right? And so we just need to make use of that now. By the way, this is one reason why we have built Circuit not just as a web application for enterprise communication collaboration, but as well as a platform as a service middleware, so that other companies can leverage our middleware components for the real-time communication, where we are the experts in, to build it into other solutions. For instance, to build it into cloud contact center solutions, or to build it into Salesforce, right? So we can real-time enable applications like Salesforce, or like SAP, or like another contact center.
I think Alex is dying to chime in.
No, the only thing I would say is...
Right, so we're doing that in our solution in Circuit.
Oh, because everything that's being said, I'm visualizing it, because a lot of it I've lived through as well on both ends. And one thing I would say is
and audio and other channels together.
No, that statement. Now we just need to make it happen, and that statement itself is actually half of the challenge, is making it happen, because the solutions are out there. I think most everyone, even at the call center, realizes that there's a better way to do things. But there are these legacy systems that are in place that are so embedded into everything else that it's very difficult to extract. And what happens, I think, oftentimes is that it's not that there is a lack of understanding that this needs to happen or that would improve customer experience, but because of the investment from a human resource investment as well as funds, etc., disruption, so on, to replace those systems, the step to actually getting this done is being deprioritized over and over and over again, because it's painful. And I think from companies and software companies that are coming in with solution, I think it would benefit both parties to put equal emphasis on the transition period as it is the software itself.
This is all just an elaborate ploy to get App Connect, to do well. I wanted to kind of throw you guys for a little bit of a loop, since all you guys are kind of focused more on the external side. As a CIO, I'm thinking always about my internal customers. How do you think that chatbots, natural language processing, and other kinds of machine learning technology can allow an employee of a company to get the data they need to make decisions? Not just a customer service rep, but an operations specialist, and an infrastructure specialist, a salesperson, somebody in finance. How can chatbots or other kinds of NLP-based machine learning algorithms allow you to get data without having to go through the SAPs and the Salesforces of the world? Is that something that's going to happen, or not? What do you think?
So I think it's already happening in some instances. It hasn't become. It's not fully entirely mature technology, or entirely proven technology, I would say, because the maturity may be there. And if you look at an enterprise, large enterprise, essentially what you have is this collection of systems. So an average retailers will have about 200, 250 legacy systems, kicking around, that all have to work with each other. And there's data that's been locked up in different silos and flowing through the systems one. And we have the technology is mature enough to actually take all this unstructured data and make it queryable, searchable, right? so that rather than figure out, okay, I need to find this form or this process or this document or who is responsible for X, right? Rather than looking through system by system or calling people around, having this locked up data unlocked and aggregated and indexed allows now for a conversational interface, essentially a chatbot saying, okay, I want to know everybody that worked on implementing, let's say, the virtual assistant at that location on this date, and also who the supplier was, who delivered it, as an example, right? And having that data available to you via conversational interface, just asking that in natural language and getting that single response, I think it's a huge value, operational value to a corporation. And I think that's where it's going. Eventually, I think for sure that's how a corporation is going to operate. But the question right now is the technology mature enough? And if it is, what are the barriers right now that prevents deploying it? Because there are issues pertaining to IP, privacy, you have PCI, and so on that still needs to be solved, I think.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think we're running out of time. Why don't I give each of you a chance to just kind of give your either on this particular question or your final thoughts in general on what we've been talking about, and then we can wrap it up. Robert, Shai, anyone? Oh, did you guys hear me?
I think
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a very good discussion. Thank you guys at Sundown to kind of put this all together. I think, all in all, I think we, in the call center space, in the AI space, wherever we are, we have to do, I think, a better job of presenting how this can be actually put into practice. It's no longer something that's, pie in the sky. This is something that's real. This is something that we should be taking advantage of and working together to not only set the expectations of what this can do, but also be thought leaders in how to put this stuff into practice is something that's really going to be important into making sure that, AI is not there to solve all the problems, but it's there to enhance those human interactions and enhance the processes that you already have in place.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think one important aspect for all this, what we just discussed, is there are millions of sensors around us, right? So there's data, and again data. So in order to make it work in a practical way for the people, I think we have to ensure that there's a certain level of configuration and customization so that you're not getting lost in all the data, and you have to be an AI expert in order to find out about results, right, to get in essence out of this. So I think this is very important. Design the right user experience, design the right workflows with the customer, the client in the center. Make it configurable, customizable, so that you can easily leverage that not just for one purpose, but for multiple purposes. And there's one other thing which I think is very important to understand. I think right now we are still separating between enterprise communication, that means internal communication, and communication and collaboration with the outside, with the customers. I think there is a strong need to bring this much closer together. People inside a company working for a client project, they should know about what they're working for.
So I think everything has been wrapped up quite beautifully, and what I was like
inside the development
to add is that chatbot itself, so there are concerns that, okay, that the chatbot removes that human element, that chatbots makes us act like machines as opposed to, you know, us interacting with humans. And I think I'm a strong believer in conversational UI, so the zero UI concept. I believe that when it is executed properly and implemented properly, as an example, we're talking about enterprise rather than clicking on screens and going through systems. In order to find information, you have a conversation, you ask the question in your natural language as a human being, you would do to another human being, and you get a response as another human being would respond to it. So I think over time, the interactions with the help of chatbots within the enterprise, but as well outside the enterprise, will actually create a more human environment, a more human interaction with the help of chatbots, as opposed to taking away the human side.
That's certainly a very optimistic way of looking at it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I would say, you know, that's it for now. Let's do this again. Yeah, maybe next Tuesday. Thanks to Sundown for organizing this.